You know the worst time to have someone break up with you? Besides the occasional story of a runaway bride you read on Craigslist, I'm pretty sure that Valentines is number one on the list. I never would have suspected that my boyfriend Caleb would actually dump me last year. Even though we had been going through some rough patches, I thought we had made it through. He hadn't given me any indication that things were going to take a turn for the worst. In fact, the week before Valentine's, he had already booked us a reservation at Red Lobster, gone out of his way to ask off for work, and told me he planned to really go all out to treat me. Then, early V-Day morning, I got a text that changed my whole world. He decided to dump me. Who does that? Is this like high school? I called him immediately to demand a response. It's just too much for me, Molly. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner, he responded. He told me a bunch of reasons why he had this sudden revelation, but a lot of it sounded like bull. I knew Caleb. He always rambled like this when he was trying to hide the truth, and the more he talked, the angrier I became with him. Just tell me you didn't cheat, please. I swear if you did, I'm going to hurt myself, I said between bitter tears. I was experiencing an emotional roller coaster, but it was about to get worse from here. He promised that he hadn't cheated and insisted that I could still keep any gifts that he had sent, including the planned reservation. I know this is all very last minute, but I need space. I need to know where I'm going and what I'm doing with my life, Caleb told me. He promised that he would keep in touch, but I could already tell in his voice that it was over. I was devastated. Honestly, I can't remember the first thing I did. Maybe I smashed something expensive or went to the bathroom and vomited. I was still reeling, and it felt like I couldn't make sense of the world around me. To be honest, I thought about self-harm. And to anyone out there who is ever going through this, please listen to me and realize no man is worth that. I'm so thankful I have had that epiphany, and I hope others do too. And come to think of it, this harrowing experience might have actually been my wake-up call, as crazy as that sounds. But anyway, there I was, trying to find the strength to stand when one of my closest friends, Felicia, texted me and asked if she could come over. I needed a lifeline to cling to after this whirlwind of a morning, so I told her to come immediately. When she got there, I think I fell into her arms and burst into tears. She was shocked but listened as I told her about what Caleb had done to me. And then she had this brilliant idea for us to go get drunk off of our butts, and it sounded exactly the kind of distraction I needed. Felicia has always been a good friend, and I knew that if I went with her, I was going to have a good time. I changed my clothes, put on makeup, and blocked Caleb from my phone. All of it felt very empowering. We went down to the lobby and called for a taxi to take us downtown, ready to live it up. When the taxi got there, I remember thinking that this day was turning out to be good after all. Felicia and I talked as the driver took us to what we thought was our destination. Felicia was extremely vocal about her disgust with Caleb and apparently all men. They always do this. Use us like playthings and get rid of us to move on to something newer and shinier, she said. I think I recall that the driver seemed tense whenever she talked like this, like it bothered him. I was so busy laughing or crying that I didn't pay it as much attention as I should have, and I also realized my memory is probably playing tricks with me because of how jarring the next thing that happened was. We were merging off of a highway to a street when Felicia made some joke about Caleb's prowess in bed when the driver abruptly sped up and we zoomed through a light. I remember being rattled and Felicia shouted to him to slow down. Instead, he just kept going, looking angry as a feral animal. "What's your problem, man?" she finally asked when he slammed on the brakes. I suddenly realized I didn't recognize the part of the city he had taken us to. Were we lost? Was something else going on? I can't tell you how much I wanted this to be a normal thing. Then he turned around and pointed a gun in our face. "Shut up and give me your phones," he ordered. Felicia and I immediately complied. He grabbed our entire purses after he took our cell phones and then started to drive again. Felicia and I were frantically trying not to be scared for our lives, but this guy was wasting no time getting us out of town. At some point, we crossed a bridge and he tossed our purses and phones into the river below. Then he kept driving to the country. There were several times in the drive that I thought about jumping from the car. I didn't know how to tell Felicia what I was thinking, though. We were both scared stiff by this sudden and surprising psycho driver that we didn't dare make a move. I think it was probably 5 by the time the taxi finally stopped, and we had arrived at what looked like a rental cabin. "Stay here," the driver ordered as he got out and went to his trunk. I had literally no idea where we might be, but I used those few precious seconds to tell Felicia that we should make a run for it. "If we work together, we can overpower him," I told her. And when he opened the door to his cab, I kicked him straight in the gut and shouted for Felicia to help me. She was right behind me, and we tussled with this guy for what was probably only 2 minutes. Sometime during the scuffle, he dropped his gun, and Felicia ran to grab it. As soon as she had it, she pointed it at the driver and demanded that he let me go. The way this dude was looking, the thought he might try something even crazier. But surprisingly, he complied and released me. "Give us your keys," Felicia demanded. He dropped them into the grass near my feet and leaned down to pick them up while my friend kept the weapon on him. "We're leaving now," she told the driver. Slowly, the two of us backed up toward the cab, and just as Felicia was about to get in, the guy rushed towards us. I swung the keys in his face and made him fall backwards with a twist. Then, I leaned into the taxi and revved the engine. I shouted to Felicia to go, and she got in the passenger side before tossing the gun out the window. I didn't want to think the nightmare was over until we got away from that cabin, and as we drove off, I could see the guy scrambling in vain to follow us. Neither of us spoke for a good 20 minutes. Then, when I think both of us had the chance to really calm down, I said, "What just happened?" Felicia had been going through the glove compartment and found a few clues. The guy had kept clippings of articles about weird white supremacy and BDSM, weird smut magazines, and what looked like a locket. When we got back into town, we gave it to the authorities and, of course, had to give statements as well. The whole thing, honestly, truly felt wildly surreal. And I later found out that that guy had been wanted in a different state for apparent murder. I know a lot of people say they come face to face with a killer without realizing it, and this was definitely, literally one of those times. It still scares me to think about it. I've been through therapy, but it's just so hard to get over how close I truly came to dying or potentially worse, all because my boyfriend decided to dump me. And I know it's not right to blame him. I wasn't thinking clearly, and maybe Felicia and I were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, but it could have gone so much worse. I guess the reason I even mentioned Caleb again is because when I told him about the whole ordeal, he just brushed this off like it was nothing. I know it sounded a little unbelievable that we went through all of that, but at least he could have had a little sympathy. I still to this day don't know what was in our conversation in the back of that taxi that just truly triggered that guy. Maybe because we joked about man or something like that. Who knows? Maybe that was just his intention from the very beginning. I have no idea. It was definitely the strangest, scariest, and most terrifying Valentines I'd ever had.
I hate telling this story, not only because of how traumatic it was for me, but because it shows my age. My therapist tells me I should learn to look for the positives in things, so the only way I really know how is by making light humor. This was the early 90s, and I was about 16 going on 17 working as a regular babysitter in our neighborhood. My parents had decided that the only way I was going to get a car would be if I was the one that saved up for the down payment. So every afternoon after school I would tutor kids or watch babies. Whatever I could do to earn a few extra bucks. There was one couple, the Moores, that always paid exceptionally well, and on Valentine's Day they had a special request for me to watch both their 6-year-old and their 10-year-old so they could go enjoy a romantic evening together. "We will be back by 8, they said, and gave me about $50 just for ordering pizza, renting movies, and whatever the kids wanted to do. I asked them both what they wanted, and they both chimed in with a request to go to the local video rental store. I knew that Blockbuster was not extremely far, but I insisted that I did not want to do that until I got confirmation from their mom. This being the age before everyone had cell phones, I had to look up the phone number in an actual phone book and call the restaurant they were at. Those two boys were so eager to hear a yes from their mom, I thought they might explode from excitement. It took about 15 minutes for me to finally get in touch with their mom, who seemed a little frazzled that the only reason I was calling was so that we could go to Blockbuster. "Yeah, that's fine, just do not spend all their money, and nothing rated R," she responded. When I told them, both boys squealed and ran to get their jackets. We left the house before it got dark and made it to the rental store in less than 10 minutes. Not surprisingly, it was empty save for the cashier and maybe one or two other customers. "Go and pick out whatever you want," I told them as I grabbed some candy bars and popcorn. The oldest came back, first with a VHS of some Disney sequel, and asked if this was okay. I told him yes, and then asked where his brother was, only for him to be surprised that I did not know. Both of us went down the aisles looking for him, and for a split second I got scared thinking he decided to play some terrible prank and run off. Finally, though, I saw him standing near the edge of an aisle, talking to a tall, lanky man wearing a trench coat. As soon as I saw this guy, I got a weird vibe and grabbed the younger boy's hand. "Sorry, I hope he wasn't bothering you," I nervously told the stranger. He smelled funny, as if he had not taken a bath in a while. He had this weird, crazy look in his eyes that told me he was trouble. I just had a feeling. I desperately wanted to be wrong about it, so I yanked the kid away and berated him as we made our way towards the cashier. "What were you telling him anyway?" I asked. "Just that we were renting some movies and that we were home alone," the kid said innocently. I couldn't tell you why, but alarm bells did not go off in my brain right away. But I guess I was too busy paying for the movies and dragging them out of the store. When we were walking back toward the house, it finally registered what he told me. "Did the man ask you if you were alone?" I asked. My heart was starting to beat a little faster, but I did not want the kids to think I was worried. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw someone following us. "Yeah, he seemed friendly, asked a lot of questions about me," the younger boy responded. I picked up the pace and told them we need to hurry back to their house. I was positive now that we were being followed. I remember I looked back several times to see where this man was, but every time it felt like it was just barely out of sight. He was a master of stealth. Once I was inside their house, I slammed the door shut and locked it. I chided the kid for being so stupid. "Don't ever talk to strangers. That man could have done some serious harm to you." I remember thinking I should punish them by having them go to bed early, but I had no idea how right I would be about that. I glanced out the windows to see if I could spot him, and calming down, I went ahead and let them pick a movie. I was also trying to convince myself my paranoia had just been that. Less than 10 minutes later, we were watching the Angels in the Outfield movie. I heard a knock at the door, and that made me realize maybe I had not been cautious enough. I went to the front and peeked through the blinds, curious to see that no one was outside. My heart was pounding now as I thought I saw the man in the trench coat standing over near the bushes. I immediately told the boys to pull the blinds closed and then to turn off the lights. Next, I started to hear this stranger banging on the windows with what sounded like a stick. Was he just trying to frighten us? If so, he was doing a stellar job because I was terrified. "Turn off the TV for now. Let's go to the bedroom," I said. I remember that the Moores had a house phone up in their master suite, so I was calmly trying to herd the kids there as this wacko kept rattling against the outside of the house. These kids were quite scared now, especially the youngest. He was crying. "Be quiet. Don't be scared," I told him. As we ran up to the bedroom, I told them both to stay as quiet as they could as I reached for the phone, only to find the line was disconnected. This is the moment when a real sense of panic and dread was starting to overwhelm me. It was just past 6:30, meaning their parents would not be home for at least another 45 minutes, and now the phone lines are down. I was positive that this stranger was going to try and break in and do us harm. Still, I insisted that they needed to remain quiet and calm. I got the older one to assist me in moving furniture to the front door as a blockade, just in case this guy broke in. It is a good thing I did, because 20 minutes later, I heard the shattering of glass and realized that's exactly what he planned to do. I told them both not to make a sound as I tried to listen where the stranger was. The one thing about the whole experience I will never forget is that the stranger started to whistle for us, like he was looking for a dog. It was loud and sharp. It was an insistent whistle, and he kept saying, "Here, boy. Here, boy. Come here, boy." I swear I've never been more scared in my life, and I ordered the boys to hide under the bed as the footsteps came up the stairs. I was sure we were about to die. It happened just like a horror movie, too. He was standing outside the door because I could see the silhouette of his shadow peeking under the master bedroom door. Then, the blockade of furniture started to rattle as I heard him fiddle with it. He shook it violently for a while, but to no success. Then another long, indescribably quiet moment. I thought maybe he had given up. The kids were trying their best not to squeal or scream or even cry, but it was so hard to be perfectly still. At any second I knew he was going to be back. Then, he slammed his body against the door, and it came slightly ajar. I remember jumping and holding the boys closer as he did it again, and then again, until at last he could squeeze in past the wedged furniture. All I could see was his shoes, leather boots that looked coated in mud. He walked slowly over to the bed and sat down, perhaps puzzling over where we were. He started whistling again, and I had to cover the younger boy's mouth as he let a leash fall over the ledge of the bed. Did he know where we were? What sort of weird fetish was this supposed to be? He walked around the room, moving to the closet first and checking for us there. Then we heard the garage door downstairs. I have never been so happy. Immediately the stranger ran down and I heard shouts of alarm as Mr. Moore likely saw him escape. A few seconds later, Mrs. Moore was in the bedroom frantically searching for us and calling out for her children. I crawled out first and helped the youngest get out as she grabbed him and hugged him as tight as possible. Downstairs, Mr. Moore was trying to get the landline again to connect the cops, but it did not work. Honestly, I thought the crazy guy was going to come back and do us harm, so I did not even want to step outside the house until my own parents came to pick me up. Mr. Moore told me that I was very brave and paid me extra for helping keep his kids safe. My parents also told me I had acted swiftly and decisively, and it could have turned out a lot worse. But I did not feel immensely proud. I had trouble sleeping for a week or so after. Any sound of a dog barking or a whistle would trigger the memory and make me want to curl up in a ball and hide. I can honestly only share it now after all these years, thanks to a bit of therapy. Sometimes I do think about what could have happened. Still though, if those parents had not shown up early, he would have harmed us or probably killed us. The cops never did catch whoever that guy was, so I guess we will never know. Except at least I know I stopped babysitting for the upper class after that.
The story took place during a difficult time for my family. My mother and father had just divorced, and my mom was trying to get on her feet again as a newly single mother of two. My dad got into a bad accident, and he almost didn't make it, so he couldn't do much to help my mom physically or financially. So my mom moved us from New York to Pennsylvania, a new state but not terribly far away. This way my mom was closer to her work. My little sister and I were having a hard time with so many new changes. Parents divorced, almost losing our father, living in a new place, and starting a new school. We started to get a hang of things, and soon it became easier. I started making new friends, and it all seemed like it was going okay. I noticed this guy that would always follow me around the school, and if I'm being honest, I didn't mind. We'll call him Greg. Greg was very attractive, and we began to talk a little. Not too much, just the normal "what's your name" kind of stuff. Soon I found myself having a small crush on him. It was totally based off of looks because, again, we didn't talk much and we hardly knew each other. This is going to sound so stereotypical, but it's true. When I came home from school, I began feeling very watched. I didn't know by what or who, but I just couldn't shake the feeling. Then later on, Greg would mention small things there would be no way of him knowing. For example, one night my mom asked me what I wanted for dinner, and I told her my favorite, tacos. The next day he made a comment along the lines of, "You like tacos, so do I." And at first I thought it was just a coincidence, but then it became too many coincidences, and I started to put it all together. So now comes Valentine's Day. We had to give everyone in our class Valentine's Day cards. I got all mine and never really looked at them until I got home. I got one from Greg. It was just the standard card with nothing special, until I noticed I had got an extra card with no name. It had a mushy love poem written on it, followed by, "I love you," and "I'm watching." Instantly, I panicked, and at the same time I sighed in relief. It's creepy someone wrote this and claimed to be watching, but it also validated I was right, and I wasn't being crazy or paranoid. I took out the card from Greg and compared it to the card with the poem. The handwriting didn't match, but I know if it were me doing this, I'd be smart enough to change my writing up. Still though, I had no proof it was this guy at this point, and I had to get creative. I thought to myself, Greg has to know I like him if he's really been watching me. I've talked about him to my sister, and I've said how cute I thought he was and all of that. And that's when it hit me. Aha, I'll carry on like normal and bring up a conversation with my sister in a few days. And I'll mention another guy instead of him. If Greg says anything about it, then I'll know for sure it was him. So I waited a couple of days to have this conversation with my sister, so it wasn't so obvious I was baiting him. I picked out a guy that was pretty cute and believable, but also a guy that I've never spoken to or had any ties to. So no one could suspect anything going on with this guy without hearing it from me themselves. So I did it. I told my sister. Just like clockwork, Greg approached me. He sat next to me silently and art class started. We started drawing and then it happened. He looked at me dead in the face and said, "I know you don't like me. You like Kevin." My heart dropped, and I didn't have much to say other than, "I don't even know Kevin." In my mind, I was even more freaked out, and even more relieved to know it was definitely him. The story has a boring ending, because after this, we moved back to New York. Thank God. I still stay in touch with some of my friends I made at that school, and a few weeks ago I was catching up with one of them. She mentioned Greg, and informed me that he had been arrested. Apparently, he beat his girlfriend. And beyond that, there was an investigation going on, and Greg was apparently charged with sexual assault. Greg really did a number on this girl. She had to be put in the hospital. And all I can say is thank God I got out of there when I did. Who knows what his intentions were with me? And remember, crazy does not have a look. Even the most attractive of people can be crazy stalkers. Number 3. Last Date. Submitted by Abby B. My last date didn't turn out too well. Valentine's Day 2016, I had made plans to go out. For privacy reasons, I'll change the guy's name to Jacob. Jacob was very tall, had green eyes, and much like me, a single parent. I just got back to dating after I left my ex, so I wasn't expecting much, but somehow we hit it off. He seemed so nice. He had a profession though that I knew I was scared of, but that didn't really matter. I mean, I didn't really call him my boyfriend or anything. I began to realize that I didn't really like him. I didn't tell him this, and I would tell him not to come over anymore. And this is where it gets weird. Jacob did come over one last time, so I could tell him I didn't want to go back out with him. He said he understood. He said he would leave me alone and not bother me anymore. Then it happened on Valentine's Day 2016. I had made plans to go out with someone else. I had my kids stay at their father's house. I was out and having a nice time with this new guy. I felt more comfortable with him, and I had no reason to be scared of him. I spent the night at my mom's trying to clear my mind, when all of a sudden my phone rings. I pick up my phone, and it's my landlord. He said to me, "Abby, did you have someone come over the last 2 nights?" I replied, very confused, "No, I haven't been home." She replied back something like, "Don't be scared to say it, but are you and the neighbor having an affair?" I stop and think, and then I remember, the neighbor and Jacob look exactly alike in the dark. You could easily say one is the other. "No, I'm not having an affair with the neighbor, but are you sure it was him? Did you see him go back to his house?" My landlord said she never saw him go in my neighbor's house or mine. She's only seen the guy on Valentine's Day and the day after. I talked to my neighbor and I know it can't be him, as he told me he wasn't home. I didn't think it could be my neighbor, because he and his wife give me hand-me-down clothes for my daughter from their daughter. So it must have been Jacob. What if I was there those nights? What would that have meant? So here's a tip to anyone who's going to leave another. Just do it, because whatever told you to leave is probably right. To this day, I have no idea what he was planning. But Jacob, let's never meet again. Number 4. My Crazy Obsessed Friend. Submitted by Moon. Before I really tell this story, I need to catch you up. This is the second time this has happened, but hopefully the last. This happened the same year I met Joe, and all of this went down. My ex Matt had moved away, so I was single. It was Valentine's Day week, and this was usually the time people start getting all lovey-dovey. But I don't care much for it, mainly because I find myself sick every Valentine's Day. There was this girl, let's call her Darla, because I want to respect her. Darla and I were pretty good friends. We hung out and had a few classes together. She had previously told me she was gay, and I respected that. Frankly, I was proud to be her friend. "So what are you going to do for Valentine's Day?" she asked me. Jessica heard, and knowing my Valentine's Day curse, she butted in. Probably be sick in bed all day and watch anime. People around us laughed, even me. But Darla didn't. She kept a straight face and kept staring at me. I was kind of creeped out, but I didn't say anything and kept talking. But as Valentine's Day kept getting closer and closer, she would keep a better eye on me, constantly wanted to be around me. It must have been 4 or 5 days away from Valentine's when she sent me a message. "Hey, are you awake?" It was about midnight, but I happened to be awake. "Yeah, what's up?" "Oh, I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine. It's 12, Darla. What did you need?" "Well, I love you, Moon," is what I remember. I did fall asleep, tired after waiting for a response for 30 minutes. The next day when I saw Darla, she ran at me and pushed me against the wall and screamed, "Why didn't you answer?" Jessica had to pull her off of me, but I couldn't believe what had just happened. I froze watching Darla scream at Jessica that I was hers and that no one else could touch me. After that, I ended up going home early. Randomly, I had gotten a text from Darla. She apologized to me for everything she did. I said it was fine and I forgave her, but over time we just stopped talking. Our friendship faded into distant memory. One day, as I was on my way to church, I looked up from my phone to see a poster. One of those police missing people posters, but with Darla's picture. My heart sank. I had a friend who we can call Abby. I asked her what had happened to Darla, because she still went to the same school as her. Apparently after I left, Darla became distant, and soon she went missing. The negative people say she killed herself, and others say she just ran away. After everything that happened, I can't help but feel that I was responsible.
I used to love Valentine's Day. I used to love all the cutesy displays and Valentine's-themed stock items we put out in the Walmart I worked at. And I used to love picking out something special for my boyfriend after planning a little date night with him. But we're not together anymore, and I'm not much of a romantic these days either. In fact, I dread February 14th coming around each year because it reminds me of one of the single worst moments in my entire life. So like I said, I worked at Walmart when this all happened, and it actually happened in the store too. I loved the decorating and checking out the romantic stock that we'd gotten in that year, but I usually tried to get Valentine's Day off. Or if I was working it, I'd trade shifts with a coworker. But this one year, I can't get off, and no one would trade with me, so I was stuck working 8 till 5 on Valentine's Day. But it's no big loss. I can wait for my presents, and me and my boyfriend arranged to do something after work anyway, so I took it on the chin. Right after I finished my lunch break, I happened to be walking by one of the Valentine's displays when I see this older guy staring at some of the items. I thought it was the cutest thing ever. This sweet older gentleman looking to pick his wife up something romantic. Or maybe he had his eye on someone in the nursing home he was at. Either way, it was super adorable to me. So I saddled up to the old guy and asked him who the lucky lady is. He's all startled for a moment, again kinda super cute, and has to compose himself before he gives me his answer. There was no one special in his life. He was just something of an old romantic, and seeing cutesy displays like ours on Valentine's Day made him long for lost loves of his. I remember he said that. I then asked if he had his eye on anyone new, and he starts talking in a way I found kind of confusing at first. Like I thought I may have misunderstood, maybe lost the context a little, but after a minute of him just sort of babbling, I realize he's not making any sense at all. He keeps skipping from thought to thought, just like a stream of broken consciousness coming out of him. It was right about then that it hit me that he wasn't all there. That was also about the time that I realized he wasn't that old either. I mean, all his hair was gray. He had like an old man jumper on, but he was so animated when he talked. He seemed sort of spry, like full of nervous energy, and at a push, I'd say he was in his mid-50s. But something about him just seemed off, and I was starting to think that initiating conversation hadn't been the best idea on my part. I wish him luck with who the lucky lady turns out to be, then slowly make a move to walk away. But he stops me, not with a word. I mean, he physically stops me from walking away. He didn't grab me or anything at first. It was just his fingers gently half wrapping around my wrist, but it was enough to really put me on edge. Then he asked me in a way that seemed both extremely childlike and extremely sinister, both at the same time. "Will you be my Valentine?" It was so surreal that initially I thought he had to be joking. Like no sane person would ask anyone that in a serious way, not like that anyway. So I just sort of laughed it off before apologizing and letting him know that I was seeing someone, and right as I do, I try to pull my wrist out of his hand. He tightens it, wraps his entire fist around my wrist, and squeezes. I just froze for a moment. In almost 2 years of working at that Walmart, I've never had so much as an issue with a customer. Maybe it's because I'm short and blonde, maybe it's because I'm just lucky. And because that whole interaction went from 0 to 100 so fast, and given my total lack of experience in any kind of conflict management, I just had no idea what to do. So I froze. The guy starts turning red in the face, and he continues to squeeze my wrist as hard as he could. There are veins bulging out of his neck. He's trembling so hard his eyes are starting to water, and he is strong, like really freaking strong. Then what he did next haunted me for months afterwards. He gets his face right in mine, while I'm absolutely frozen in terror, and starts singing. He tried to keep his voice down, but he couldn't get the words out without his words trembling from whatever weird rage fit he was going through. After 2 lines, I just start screeching for help, but as soon as I start making any noise, one of his hands shoots up around my throat and pushes me back hard against a shelf. And when he starts squeezing, I stop being able to scream. Then, one of his other hands goes somewhere else, somewhere I really wish he hadn't put it. But when he did, I finally found the strength to really fight back. But it was over moments later. Some other customer had come barreling down the aisle when he heard my scream and tackled the guy so hard that he almost floored me too. And if the guy seemed crazy before he got tackled, afterward he turned into a full-blown lunatic. He actually bit the guy who first got him down, and if it wasn't for security showing up as quick as they did, I think he might have actually gotten free. He was legitimately frothing at the mouth by the time the cops showed up. I've never seen a person look like that before. That guy was more animal than man by that point. And the fallout was huge. Walmart sent me to some trauma management thing that didn't help at all, and sent emails around to the other associates promising they'd do better with security and stuff, but it was all just for show. I gave statements to the police too, and for a while, it looked like I'd have to go to court to testify against the guy that assaulted me. But as it turned out, he was found unfit to stand trial, and instead of going to real prison, he ended up in some state hospital somewhere else. When it was all said and done, I just tried to get over it. It was one of the more horrific moments of my life, sure, but I refused to let it define me. And for a long while, I worked on my overall mental health and particularly my sense of self-esteem. I thought I was good after that. I thought I was fixed. So there was no way of me anticipating what would happen when I met a friend at this 50s diner that was our favorite place to eat. We're just sitting there, conversation on hold while we eat, and the song comes on the old jukebox. Until the lyrics started, everything was fine, but then these two girls started singing some words that I thought I'd gotten out of my head completely. I know you belong to somebody new, but tonight you belong to me. I recognized it instantly from the weird little changes in pitch in the girls' voices, but it was the exact same song the guy in Walmart had sang before he grabbed me. I know I caused a bit of a scene when I got up and fast walked out of there, with my friend calling after me, but I honestly didn't care. I couldn't breathe while that song was in my ears. I just couldn't be there. I suppose trauma is weird like that. No matter how much you think you have it under control, it's still there, bubbling away just beneath the surface. But I do work at it, and I managed to neutralize how that creepy old song made me feel too. I mean, it took a while, but I managed it. Like I said, I'm not going to let what happened define me, and I'll wear my wounds with pride. But Valentine's Day is most definitely ruined for me.